Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
This show is brought to you by the Open to Hope Foundation, as well as in partnership with the Compassionate Friends and the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation.
Our guest today is Mary Potter Kenyon. Mary is the author of 3 books. Her most recent is Refined by Fire, A Journey of Grief and Grace, which details her process of grief and healing after the loss of her mother, husband, and grandson in a 3-year period. Refined by Fire recently received the 2014 USA Best Book Award. She is a frequent speaker and columnist of the topics of grief, loss, and healing. Welcome to our show, Mary.
Hello. I'm glad to be with you.
It's great to have you on, and I was blown away when I opened your book, Refined by the Fire, which I loved. You have such a great sense of humor in the face of crisis, I must say. In the first of your book, you have a genealogy chart, and I was, wow, she's got 8 kids, right?
Yes, I do. I have 8 children.
Fantastic. And you still have a chance to write and deal with, I guess, the supportive part of writing, because in your book you have sections from the journal that you've kept after your husband died. He's only been dead for 3 years. That's not very long, is it?
No, it's 3 years last Friday. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Wow. And you were married for 32 years. Is that right?
Yep. Well, we were going to have our 34th anniversary a couple months after he died. We would have been married for.
Wow.
Wow. And did he die of cancer, Mary?
No, he was a 5-year cancer survivor, and going through that with him and as his caregiver, 5.5 years after his cancer treatment, he had a heart attack, and so he had stent surgery, and he died shortly after coming home from the hospital during the night.
Oh, wow. Wow, so he survived the cancer, but he died of a heart attack.
Yes, he did.
Wow.
But I look at those 5.5 years as bonus years because he could have died with the cancer, and then we got this beautiful marriage out of that experience. And so I think of those as our bonus years, those 5.5 years after his cancer. He had survived cancer, survived the surgery, came home from the hospital, and then one morning when I went to wake him up for his coffee, he was gone.
Wow. And looking at all this, you lost 3 people in 3 years, your mother, your husband, and your grandson. Who was it, your husband that died first, or what order were they in?
My mother died in 2010, and then approximately 17 months later, my husband died, and 17 months after that, my grandson died of cancer.
Wow. That is so much loss in such a short period of time. Did your writing help you to heal and help you to kind of process all this loss?
It did. I've been writing ever since shortly after I got married in 1979. So writing has always been a part of my life, and I didn't actually journal until after my husband died, but I did write essays about losing my mother, and I had a whole blog that all of a sudden turned into a grief blog because it had been about becoming a writing mother. And after I lost my mom, I wrote about going into her empty house and just what it was to lose a mother. And so it kind of became a grief blog for quite a while. And then after my husband died, the morning after he died, I picked up a journal and I just started writing my way through it.
What is the difference to you in your mind as a writer and under these circumstances between writing on a blog, I assume that was on the internet, and then writing actually in a journal? I sometimes think handwriting does something for us. I don't know.
I think it does too. I did write while I sat by my husband during his chemotherapy treatments. That's when I started writing and realized, I'm writing a book about this, because so many of the books that were written by caregivers, the person died at the end, and I wasn't willing to look at that. And so I started writing during his cancer, and I think writing in the journal. I even wondered, how do people get through this without writing down what they're going through? Because I think somehow the writing was like a type of therapy for me, and it was working my way through all these different feelings. And then the blog postings became, how can I help somebody else? How can I reflect on this, that somebody else can go to this? At one point, my son said, I'm not even going to look at your blog anymore, Mom, because it's just grief and I can't handle it. And I felt bad. I thought, maybe I shouldn't be blogging about this stuff. And so I announced on my blog that I'm going to try to, it had been maybe 3 months since my husband had died, I'm going to try to, look at some more cheerful topics. And I had widows emailing me saying, please don't stop blogging about this. We forward your blog post to our kids. They can see what we're going through so they can understand. And I thought, okay, there is a need for other people to see how somebody gets through this so that they might find some answers in their own journey through grief.
Now, is there a pressure when you're blogging like this at this time to answer people who say things? And, do you always feel like answering? And, how does that go?
I think the pressure was more, do I tell the truth?
Mm.
Because first, right after my husband died, it was like, how do I do this? What am I going to feel like a year from now? Or how am I going to get through the next few weeks? And when it's 4 months out from the grief, do I tell people? Do I admit on a blog where everybody can see it? Do I admit that I still broke down in a grocery store 4 months out because I don't want somebody to be scared to think, oh my gosh, that there was more pressure in that than answering questions. I loved when people emailed me or asked, when did you take off your ring, or how did you decide this, or because those are the questions we all have, as we're facing grief. This is new to us. How do we do this? What's the right way to do this? And there is no right way. And that was the whole point. A few books I did not find that helpful, but there was others. Oh, there was some of the writing that just pulled me down deeper because there was no hope in it. There has to be hope. And so I thought, what was your point of sharing this dark, deep despair without adding a little bit of hope, without adding that little bit of light? And so there was certain authors that were very helpful to me because I could see, they survived this. They not only survived this, but they thrived, and they they got out on the other side, whatever the other side is, because is it a year later that you're on the other side of grief? No, because 3 years later I'm still dealing with crying in the grocery store once in a while. It takes the strangest things, and you see that, and it's all of a sudden you're right there again.
Well, Mary, I'm wondering, with that in mind, when your grandson died, how many months or how many years later after your husband? 17 months, you said?
It was I think 17, 18 months after David died in March.
Okay, so how old was your grandson when he died?
My grandson was 8. He had just celebrated his 8th birthday.
Wow. So when your 8-year-old grandson died, did it kind of throw you back into an earlier... Now you're grieving for your grandson. Did you also feel that, oh my gosh, now I'm also grieving for my husband and my mom, and it got kind of complicated?
It did. I think so. It was like the fresh waves of grief for the person who had... It's like I wasn't done yet with one, and I was already grieving another. And I don't think there is any done yet, but you get to a point where your days are different, and then to lose a grandson who had been fighting cancer for 2.5 years. So my husband knew that my grandson was fighting cancer when my husband died. And then there was I'm glad you aren't here to see this.
Yeah.
To know that.
And also your need to support your daughter too, right?
She didn't even have time to grieve her dad because her son was fighting cancer when her dad died.
Yeah.
And so she was at the hospital sometimes 40 days at a time.
Yeah.
And there was no grieving her father because she was trying to help her son go through all this. So it was a tough time for her whole family.
And how about you not having time to grieve for your husband when you were trying to help your daughter and grieving for your grandson?
And there's people who would say, well, at least you've got the kids, and it's got to be easier with kids there. And yet sometimes I would think, well, I can't cry in the middle of the night. I can't start sobbing because I have these kids to worry about too. I can't scream in the house all by myself because there was no all by myself. And so there was that added. I can't say which would be easier. It's just different. But I don't know if it was easier with children or harder because you have to think of their grief, especially the younger ones. How do I help them?
Right. Wow. A huge amount of pressure. I loved something you said in the book. You have such a wonderful sense of humor, I'll have to say. You said that there was information that said, don't make any decisions for 2 years. Then you said, it was no question that I would ignore the advice. It was just a matter when I would.
It's true, because everybody was saying, don't make any decisions.
I like that.
And I nod my head, but I knew inside my head that I was going to go buy a different vehicle.
Yeah.
And so I didn't say anything. My older son, of course, would have either talked me out of it or helped me. But this was just something my husband had been talking about. I want you safe on the road. We're going to get you this. And he said what it was going to be. And I wasn't listening because I thought he was just talking. And so I'd nod my head, but I knew I was making this big decision. I did it all by myself, and it went well. And later I thought, I ignored them. I didn't ask for their help. I may have hurt my older sons. Why didn't Mom come to us? But it was something I needed to do.
And talk about going and getting the car. I love the fact that you told this kid who was selling you the car all about your husband and all that.
I did everything I shouldn't have done. You don't go in there and tell them you're a widow. Don't go in there and tell them, that you've We've never spent more than $1,500 on a vehicle, which we hadn't.
So you know nothing about buying a car.
And I just looked at this stunned expression on this kid's face. It's like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do with this woman who's sitting there telling me all these deep, dark secrets, and he's looking at me as his mother or his sister or something, and thinking, oh my gosh, I can't. And we sat there for all afternoon. It was probably a good 6 hours of back and forth, going back and forth on this, dickering this price down, and he finally told his boss, we're dealing with this coupon queen here, and I don't, it's like he did something stupid, but I got me the best deal because my brother said, oh my gosh, this place does not go that low on a vehicle. So I did good, but I went against all sane advice by telling that kid, that young man, that this was a widow who knew nothing about vehicles, who was buying a vehicle.
A little did he know that you knew how to get a good price. That's what you knew how to do.
I knew how to
Mention how he thought that. You've written a book on coupons, right?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Tell us that. Then what was the name of that book?
It's Coupon Crazy, and it's the history of this huge culture that I've been a part of ever since I got married. As a college student, had to save money on groceries, and so this is a huge part of my life, was couponing. And back in the day when you'd save all these labels and send for free stuff, I used to do all my Christmases that way. My kids would have the free T-shirts, the free Hershey baseballs, the stocking stuffers with all free things from manufacturers. So this is a big part of my life, and my husband had finally said, it's a hot topic right now because there was this television show about extreme couponing. He said, you need to write a book about that. And it wasn't a how-to. It's more of a, what was this like, this culture that I belonged to, this part of life that he was such a part of. He didn't know what I was doing when I was saving all this money with coupons, but he'd wrap his arm around me at the checkout and say, well, isn't she great, at the end of the shopping trip? But he had no idea how I was doing all this magic with coupons and walking out with free stuff out of the store. But he was this huge support of that. So that was really hard to write the book. I wrote the book before he died. I didn't get it accepted for publication until after he died. To see that book in a Barnes & Noble window and know this is something he had believed in, something he had encouraged, and he's not there. So it was a very bitter moment, and I think I cried.
And he would have been so excited to see that.
Yeah.
Oh, he would have been thrilled.
Yeah.
He was so supportive of writing it.
Well, Heidi, she tells another story in her book you have a connect with, and that is connected with Chucky Cheese, because Heidi was the mouse one year, right, Heidi?
I was Chucky, yes.
Oh, my gosh.
I was Chucky. Chucky is often a female. Remember that, kids, when you're trying to beat up Chucky.
My children were so scared of that mouse, but that is what we did for our family fun every year. We would go to the Chucky Cheese for somebody's birthday, and it became this family ritual year after year. And my husband and I would get in that little photo booth. Not all of the Chucky Cheeses had that, but the photo booth where it would draw your picture. And I would joke year after year, because it cost $0.25. I would joke, we're going to use this for an important picture in our life, and for our 30th anniversary, I actually ran it in the newspaper, and my husband went to work, and people were saying, oh, that's a beautiful picture, where'd you get that taken? And he just would smile. And it was our secret joke, that beautiful picture that people were saying was so wonderful, was a 25-cent Chuck E. Cheese photo. It's now also in the middle.
I love it.
But
That's a great memory.
But talk about the tombstone.
Well, that was something I didn't know. It took so long to get one, for one thing. And the first 2 times I went into this office to get one, I started crying. And she said, you're just not ready. Go take pictures of ones you like there. And so I did that. And that was pretty much...
Ooh, that's sensitive. She was sensitive. I like that.
My kids said, don't put a Chuck E. Cheese picture on the middle of your tombstone. That's so tacky. And at some point, I told the woman this, and she said, well, this is for you, not for them. And I could imagine my 35-year-old son crawling in the cemetery after I'm gone, chipping away and getting that Chuck E. Cheese picture up. But it looks great. It looks great in the middle of it. But it was this huge decision that weighed on me heavily. Every time I went past the cemetery and saw nothing, no tombstone there, and I would just, it looked like nobody cared. So it was this big vision to make, and it's beautiful. And I used it on my first Christmas card after his death.
Oh, I love it.
I usually always send out a Christmas letter, and I thought, well, what picture, what shows what our whole year was? And that's the only thing I could think of. It was this tombstone. It was a lot. I didn't do a letter. I sent this crazy card with a picture of a tombstone on and said, live like you're dying, love like it's your last day, and laugh, because this is probably the only Christmas card you're going to get with a tombstone on it. And so my brother said, I was kind of worried about you when I got that card. If you do that again next year, I'm really going to be worried about you. He says, but I kind of got it. I know what you were doing. It was just my way of, that was our year.
Uh,
I love that.
well, Mary, thank you so much for being on the show. I love your book, Refined by the Fire, A Journey of Grief and Grace. I love it because it's human, it's you, it's just right straight up. And God bless you and those kids, and I hope things go well with them. And I wanted you to tell people how to get your book and your website, and then I wanted you to read a little piece from your book.
Okay, thank you. The Refined by Fire can be purchased on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any of your local bookstore, or the Familius website, the Familius publishing website. And my website is www.marypotterkenyon.com. And this little piece that I'm going to read is in my book, and it's just a short thing that kind of tells you what my journey was like. In the midst of the darkness of loss, I found light. Admittedly, in those first few weeks, it might have been but a single small spark I sensed deep inside of me, but that spark guided me in the twisted, dark journey of grief. As I stumbled over the roots of hopelessness and despair, that light grew to illuminate my path, a path I sometimes felt very alone on. At some point in the journey, I turned around, and there was God.
Well, Mary, thank you so much for being on the show today, and thank you for all the things that you're doing for the world, and God bless you and your sweet family.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. The time went really fast.
Thanks, Mary. You are really an example of how you can find hope after multiple loss. Thank you so much.
And thanks for listening to our show today, and we hope that you'll let your friends and family know about it. And Heidi and I also want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.